Hello, friends and lovers, and today we are back with a queer book review. This month we read Planet News by Allen Ginsberg, and by we, I mean mostly me because I'm not sure anyone here actually reads along. I think you're just around for the ride of watching me flounder to read the books that I choose for myself. Some of you may already know this, but I am a huge fan of Allen Ginsberg's work. I love Howl. Kaddish is my favorite poem. So, that being said, I wanted to do Planet News for January because I decided to add in poetry as a section in the queer book review because if it so happens that I get sort of like behind in my reading like I did at the end of last semester, a poetry book is usually pretty short. I can read it pretty quickly. And then we have what happens here, which is where I got caught up, did a book review, did some other videos for you, and then finally got up to January's book, which is the correct month that we're in. So before we keep going, I want you to know that I gave Planet News a 3 out of 5 stars, and that's really, really low for me. The reason for this is that I think in this book, Allen Ginsberg really was starting to lose his oomph and his chutzpah, and it's being replaced with this middle-aged sort of let the wind take me wherever, my life doesn't matter anymore sort of thing that happened to a lot of people who were Allen's sort of group of people. And the reason that I feel like I can say this is that Allen Ginsberg in 1961 to 1967, which is the period of time that this book, all of the poems that are in this collection, were written. Allen Ginsberg was 40, late 30s, early mid 40s. Allen Ginsberg is a gay Jewish poet. His first book of poetry, Howl, was published in the mid-50s, 1956 to be exact, and his fame sprouted off of that. It didn't hurt that Howl was used in an obscenity trial, which basically means that his work was on trial for being obscene, which it is, but also as Americans we have a right to free speech. We can thank Allen Ginsberg for that. There's a big difference between who Allen Ginsberg was when he was writing those poems, having been kicked out of Columbia University and traveling the country with a bunch of other, assholes, to then who he is writing in 1961, where his sort of, existence as a sexually viable man in the gay community is, over. I don't believe that that's true, but a lot of gay men think that once you hit late 30s, even when you hit 30, actually, you kind of stop existing and your existence stops mattering. And I think Allen felt that in a way. And I think that it really does come through in his writing. I think it's definitely way more sad and way more toned down. There's still some of his really unique things that he puts in his writing, which is a lot of political references, and it's very, punchy, is the way that I like to describe his writing. I mean, there's obviously, lines here and there that I really enjoyed, and I was obviously highlighting throughout the book, but it just, wasn't his best. Someone who's obsessed with him and literally has an entire stack of books over there that's just his life. Books he wrote, letters he wrote that have now been turned into books, biographies of him and his friends, and even his friends' books so that I can learn more about his life through hearing from them. I am disappointed in this book because I'm gauging it off of his other work that I'm familiar with. I think probably if I were to judge it not being a super fan, of Alan's, I would probably give this book a 4 out of 5 stars. So if you've made it this far and you're like, oh, I'm not sure, I think you should read it, but I do think you should start with Howl, and then you should go to Kaddish, which I've only read Kaddish, the individual poem. I haven't read the collection. I'll do that sometime eventually. Out of all of the poems in this book, I thought that the best one was City Midnight Junk Strains, which was written for Frank O'Hara after he passed. Frank O'Hara and Allen Ginsberg sort of like cross paths a little bit in Greenwich Village. So that's kind of cool. That's very cool stuff. You could learn about that if you read The Village, which, like, hardcore was the best book I read in 2018. And, like, I think about that book nonstop. If I wasn't trying to always be reading new material, except for my favorite book, Invincible Summer by Hannah Moskowitz, I would probably be rereading The Village right now because there was just so much information in there, and I want to know everything about The Village and have it all memorized. So I'm going to read just sort of like a few lines that are from the poem that he wrote for Frank O'Hara, just so that if you haven't ever read him, you can kind of get a taste of like what his style is. Especially like this late in his career, I do think it's pretty distinctly different, but I'm going to leave this up to you guys and stop saying what I think is going on in his life. 40's only half a life. To have filled with so many fine parties and evenings, interesting drinks together with one faded friend or new, understanding social cat. I want to be there in your garden in the clouds, all of us naked, strumming our harps and reading each other new poetry in the boring celestial friendship committee museum. You're in a bad mood? Take an aspirin. In the dumps, I'm falling asleep, safe in your thoughtful arms. So that's just like a snippet from in the middle of the poem, and I was like, how could I find a part that's kind of similar to his style without being profane? Because he talks about the Beepus a lot. Overall, I still totally recommend reading Planet News. It's just not my favorite of his. So that's just something to keep in mind. As for this next month, I thought we were going to be reading Call Me By Your Name. We're not. We're going to be reading Sabine by AP. It is like a 1950s lesbian erotica. So it's going to be interesting. The cover is like beautiful. It like looks super vintage, but like this book is pretty new. I can't remember when I bought it. I think I must have been at some bookstore and been like, a gay book. Well, I, a young person who identified as a lesbian at the time, have to buy this. Please read along with me and like let me know what you think of this book, because I'm stressed that it's going to take me forever to read it because I'm not going to want to read it. Thank you for watching. Join the Goodreads group. Follow me on all social media. If you like this video, giving it a like is great because I do have some Nazi trolls out there who are constantly disliking my videos. So if you enjoyed it, like it, subscribe. I do different reviews of queer literature every single month, and you know, if you have a book that you want me to review, just pop in the comments section or, you know, DM me on Twitter or something. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you next time.
Oh, Mamma Mia, here I go again. My, how could I resist you? Mamma Mia, does it show again?